Yo, what is up YouTube? James Baek here, and welcome to my guide to building a Pokemon VGC 2018 team. So this guide will focus on advice on how to build a VGC 2018 team. It will not provide you with a VGC 18 team, and it will not build you one. However, it will give you general advice on how you can build your own VGC 2018 team. So with that said, let's get started. So before we make a VGC 2018 team, we need to know the rules first. Flat doubles battle rules, which is always VGC, with having 6 Pokemon in a party and bringing 4 Pokemon in each battle, level cap of level 50, and all the scales levels up or down to level 50. Items and species clause is in effect, so you cannot have duplicate items or Pokemon, so you can't have like 2 Assault Vests on the same team, or you cannot have 2 Landis variants on the same team. Megastones and Z crystals are legal in this format, so you have a 5-minute timer that counts down every time you make a move in VGC or every time you make a switch, and basically when that player timer goes down to 0, you do lose the game. Similar to VGC 2015 and Pokemon Sun and Moon doubles battle spot formats, if anyone has played those. All Pokemon in the National Pokedex are legal, excluding legendaries and mythical Pokemon such as Diancie, Kyogre, Groudon, Jirachi, Celebi, Palkia, Dialga, Giratina, etc. And all Pokemon must be obtained in Alola, caught/bred in Pokemon Sun, Pokemon Moon, Pokemon Ultra Sun, and or Pokemon Ultra Moon. So some useful tools that are great for the team building process. You have the Pokemon Showdown Team Builder, which is very convenient to store your teams in, and yeah, just easy to make EV spreads, keep basically a list of teams. You have the Trainer Tower Damage Calculator, which is great for helping with making EV spreads. You got the Pokemon Showdown, which is a battle simulator, which I highly recommend using because it's easy to test teams, easy to make teams, and you don't have to get them in game yet. So you don't have to spend time making the team first and then playing on Battle Spot. You can just go on Showdown, make the team in like 10 seconds, and then just battle on the VGC Showdown ladder. You have the Pokemon Global Link, where the Pokemon Global Link has usage stats for the Championship Battle Spot ladder, which I highly recommend checking out. You have the Pokemon Championship Battle Spot ladder, where you can test the teams in game and play against players from all around the globe. You got the QR code rental teams, where you can basically test teams out from the global link from players who upload their teams. You got Japanese blogs, which are kind of hard to find. One of them is Amol Gaming, which uploads consistent players team reports, and yeah, it's hard to find Japanese blogs. You basically have to look all over Twitter, so it's hard to find. And finally, VGC YouTube channels, which I have provided in my introduction to VGC 2018 and resources guide, so I highly recommend go checking that out, because I will link in the description down below, because if you want to go check out some VGC YouTubers which can, give you some inspiration for teams, highly recommend go checking that out. Let's talk for what I consider to be the 5 main types of teams in VGC 2018. The first one, you got Hyper Offense, which is basically teams that have a lot of offensive pressure, are just able to do a massive amount of damage, pick up early knockouts, and focus on just attacking basically and doing a lot of damage. So usually these teams consist of like terrain, they consist of weather, just boosting the power of their attacks, being able to outspeed your opponent, doing a lot of damage. These teams tend to be frail but are able to pick up really quick and easy knockouts. Defensive/stall. These teams tend to rely more on basically trading with your opponent. So these teams basically take hits really well, usually have recovery, and will be able to basically chip away at your opponent with moves such as Leech Seed and Toxic, wear them down. And these teams tend to play a slow-paced game, and yeah, there's a lot of Intimidate, there's a lot of Fake Out, there's a lot of moves such as Toxic, for instance, Recycle, the berries, leftovers, grassy terrain. There's a lot of recovery involved with these teams, and it could be in for a long one whenever this kind of team is available. Balance and Good Stuff is probably the main team you're going to see in the format, just because of the Pokemon that are consistent in the format are going to be used on the same team. You got Pokemon such as like Cresselia, Heatran, Gardevoir, Tapu Fini, Landorus Fairy, Kangaskhan, Zapdos, and Aegislash. And these Pokemon usually have a good balance in offensive and defensive stats and have consistent abilities and just work so well together with other Pokemon that you can have 6 of these Pokemon on a team and it can do really well. So it is a very solid team, and a lot of teams that you will probably face in VGC will be balanced or good stuff. Balance is also considered a mix between hyper offensive and defensive teams. So yeah, so basically you have a good balance between offensive pressure and defensive switch-ins. And yeah, this is a team you're gonna want a lot of practice against facing. Setup is another form of team. Basically what kind of setup this is basically having Pokemon with setup moves such as Belly Drum, Quiver Dance, you know, the Z moves that can basically just set up for your Pokemon to sweep and pick up quick KOs. And usually these teams are accompanied by support, a lot of support, usually like Fake Out Pressure, screens or Aurora Veil, redirection to prevent these setup Pokemon from being knocked out and then doing their job of KOing opposing Pokemon. Then we have the Udder, and this form of team it usually plays different from other teams. The main one I really want to consider here is Perish Trap, which, you know, could be labeled as defensive / stall or setup, but basically with Shadow Tag it prevents you from switching, which makes it a whole different type of team to play against, as well as the 3-turn timer, a Perish Song. So it can be very tough to play against this kind of team, especially if you do not have good answers for it. So what are the common cores that we see in VGC? I only listed a few because there's way too many cores out there, but I'm going to give you an example of what's pretty popular in the format in general. So these are the common cores of Pokemon that you'll typically see next to each other. So Tapu Fini, Zapdos, and Landorus Fairy. Tapu Fini and Zapdos are really defensive Pokemon already. Landorus Fairy gives them Intimidate. They have great type coverage overall, just being able to do a lot of damage and hit a lot of Pokemon for really solid damage as well. And yeah, with Landorus Intimidate just providing so much bulk, Zapdos can, you know, run the Misty Seed as well, increase its special defense, so it can be really hard to handle, especially with access to recovery. Tapu Fini can set up Calm Mind, for instance, and be really hard to hit after the Intimidate as well. And Zapdos also gets Tailwind, which provides some speed control for this kind of team. Next we have Rain and Rain. Basically, you know, you have like the Rain Setter, Pelipper, or Politoed. Then you have like the Rain Sweepers with like Ludicolo or Swampert. And basically these teams just focus on trying to get as much damage as possible with the weather control up. So these teams do a lot of damage, can be very scary to play against. There aren't many water resists in the game. And yeah, this team can really do a lot of damage in general. Tapu Lele, Metagross, and Hydreigon. Metagross, Hydreigon are really solid together because they pretty much cover each other's weaknesses perfectly, except fighting from Hydreigon, which Tapu Lele does quad resist. And with Tapu Lele boosting the psychic terrain of the Metagross can do a lot of damage. Hydreigon can provide support with like Tailwind and handle Pokemon that Metagross and Tapu Lele don't really like to handle, such as Aegislash. And these combination is actually a fantasy core. If you don't know what a fantasy core is, it's the Dragon, Steel, and Fairy core. So next we have Gardevoir, Amoonguss, and Landorus Fairy, and this kind of core revolves around Gardevoir, with Mega Gardevoir being able to do a lot of damage with Hyper Voice, Pixelate boosted, as well as Psychic, able to do a lot of damage. But of course Mega Gardevoir's weakness is its lower physical defense, and that's where Amoonguss can help with Redirection and Spore to help set up, you know, Trick Room. And Landorus Fairy can help with Intimidate, as well as help Pokemon that Amoonguss and Gardevoir really don't like facing in general, such as Heatran and Aegislash, for instance. Sand is very common, especially with Japan Sand being the most common, which is a form with Tyranitar, Escadrille, and Salamence. Usually it's a Scarf Tyranitar with Assurance, and what this combination allows you to do, one, you have Weather for like opposing rain, which can, you know, help with the weather matchup. Two, Escadrille's a really threatening Pokemon that can do a lot of damage, and especially with the Sand boosting its speed with Sand Rush, it is a massive threat, as well as Tyranitar's ability for the move Assurance, because what Assurance does, if a Pokemon is already damaged before Assurance is used, Assurance will double in power. So with Mega Salamence and Escadrille, they move faster before Tyranitar. Even if Tyranitar is scarred, Mega Salamence will be able to outspeed Tyranitar and able to get like a Hyper Voice, and then Assurance can do a lot of damage when with the double in power. Next we have Charizard, Landorus, Variant, and Cresselia. This is quite a common core. It was quite common in VGC 2015, and basically the Landorus Variant plus Charizard able to do a lot of damage. With Charizard being immune to ground type attacks, Landorus Variant can fire off really powerful Earthquakes. Charizard going to be able to provide Tailwind as well as powerful Heat Waves, and this duo can basically do a lot of damage. And Cresselia is pretty common because of the fact it's a great defensive switch-in for these Pokemon might not have the best defenses in the world. And also with Cresselia, it can provide a lot of support to Charizard. For instance, Icy Wind, Thunder Wave, Trick Room. It can do a lot, as well as maybe set up a Calm Mind as well. A Calm Mind and Moonlight sets. It's in the sun, Moonlight will restore your health by 75%. So Cresselia can heal 75% in one turn. Kangaskhan, Volcarona, Aegislash. This is a team that's more focused on setting up Volcarona. Kangaskhan has the options for Fake Out, which can help and do a lot of damage to weaken Pokemon for Volcarona. And Aegislash can support Volcarona with the Wide Guard, and also it's a great defensive switch-in. And Volcarona can just Quiver Dance and do a lot of damage to the opposing side. Cresselia and Heatran is a duo that's really common in VGC, has a lot of options, just really solid in general. You know, Cresselia can provide a lot of support for Heatran, Icy Wind, Thunder Wave, Trick Room, as well as Skill Swap Levitate onto Heatran, which is interesting. And Heatran can do a lot of damage, and it's really defensive. These Pokemon are really defensive in general. And also Cresselia can maybe set up Sunny Day for Heatran to boost the power of its fire type attacks. Tapu Bulu, Rotom Wash, and Heatran are also another core here because of the fact that Tapu Bulu with grassy terrain is helping Heatran take less damage from ground type attacks such as Earthquake and Bulldoze. And Rotom Wash is a fire, water, grass core, and basically these Pokemon are really defensive and can switch in and can kind of chip away at your opponent. So in order to have a successful team, you're going to need game plans for these kinds of teams. You're going to need a game plan for weather, rain, sand, sun. With their speed advantage, sometimes they can just sweep through unprepared teams that just don't have a way to outspeed or survive these kinds of attacks. There's Hard Trick Room, which you should never underestimate Hard Trick Room because they can do a lot of damage, and if your best way of stalling out Trick Room is like by protecting and stalling the turns out, these Pokemon can pick up knockouts before Trick Room is gone, and then you're already down like 4-2. So yeah, Hard Trick Room is definitely a scary thing, and you do want answers to it. Good Stuff is another thing because it's probably the most common VGC 2018 team you will face, because there's a lot of different kinds of good stuff out there, and there are a lot of great Pokemon, and it's pretty much just the most consistent teams you can probably use up to date because these Pokemon just do so well in general. Finally, there's Perish Song, and Perish Song does play differently, especially with the Shadow Attack. You're going to need a game plan for that, especially since there's a lot of Perish Song teams out there. And yeah, if you can't figure out a way past the Shadow Tag trap, it's might as well game over. So building around an idea or core. Well, when building a team, the best idea for building a team is to build it around a certain core like Fire, Water, Grass, or Dragon, Steel, Fairy. A certain Pokemon or duo, or an idea / strategy like Skill Swap Levitate onto Heatran or Trick Room. After you have a strategy, core, or idea you choose to build your team around, choose Pokemon that can support your core or cover weaknesses that your core has. For instance, does your core need Fake Out? Does your core have a weakness to ground? You might want a ground immunity, for instance. There are multiple options of Pokemon, so feel free to use and experiment around, especially less common and more unorthodox Pokemon if they can accomplish the role they are needed to do, especially since this can offer the element of surprise. But in my opinion, it doesn't matter how used a Pokemon is, how good it is. The question is, does it fit on my team, and can it provide the roles that I need it to do? When you add a new Pokemon or change a set during the team building process, see if that allows you to change anything on your team, EVs / natures, movesets, items. For instance, do I want to change items to help with like certain matchups? Like, do I want a Hidden Power Fire Coco if I'm having trouble with Kartana, for instance, and maybe that wants me to change up the item or move sets of my other Pokemon to help balance out other matches that I lose from losing the move that I replaced with Hidden Power Fire. That kind of stuff, and repeat steps 2 to 4 several times until you have a team. So some frequently asked questions I do get during the team building process: do I need a Tapu or a Mega Pokemon or a Z-Crystal on my team? The answer is no, they are not necessary. Although they are really good, it is not necessary at all for a successful VGC team. Is speed control necessary on a successful team? No, there have been teams that do not have speed control and have done extremely well. However, speed control is usually on the top teams and is pretty good at overall on any team, especially to gain momentum. Do I need to move Protect on most of my Pokemon? No, Protect is a great move, but you do not absolutely need it. Is it okay to run 2 or more choice items on my team? Yes, it is okay to run 2 or more choice items. Just be warned that having 2 or more choice items can be troublesome, especially if your opponent just protects to scout out your choice items and then you're locked into a move and then you could be put in a bad situation. Can I have more than 2 Z Crystals or Mega Stones on my team? I recommend that you have a maximum of 2 Z Crystals or Mega Stones on a team, especially since, you know, there are a bunch of other items and you can only Mega Evolve or use a Z move once in the game. So I highly recommend only having 2 at maximum, but otherwise, no, do not have more than 2 Z Crystals or Mega Stones on a team. That is highly unrecommended. So should my team focus on balance or countering teams that I expect to be popular in the metagame? Now, this is always a thing. Do I counter the metagame or do I focus on a team that's more comfortable and fits me as a player? In my opinion, in a big format like this where everything's basically viable in the format, there's so many different kinds of teams and strategies out there that can be used. I recommend more of a focus on balance. So basically, focus on teams you're comfortable with, teams that have decent matchups against everything, maybe some even matchups, and focus on those matchups, because like you might have some good matchups against certain teams, but you know, you're not always guaranteed to face those kinds of teams. So I would highly recommend just focus on teams that have good or even matchups with most things in the metagame currently. Of course, you know, Worlds is an exception. We always usually see a lot of counter teams, but in general, I feel like for like regionals and internationals, I feel like you should be more focused on what is comfortable for you and a good balance for matchups in general. Should my team have one certain to-go lead or strategy, or be more flexible and have many different options? Now, in my advice, I would recommend it to be more flexible and have more options, especially with lead options. I think lead options should be flexible. You can lead almost anything with anything on those kinds of teams, and I think those teams are really solid, whether like compared to like, you know, maybe like a Trick Room, like Hard Trick Room for instance. You're probably just gonna want to set up Trick Room, but it doesn't work in like some matchups where you can't get Trick Room up potentially, or the fact is that you're facing an opposing Trick Room, so it can be really difficult. So I think having many different options and being flexible is the way to go. But I will say there's nothing wrong with having a consistent lead on a team that just does really well in general. Things you want on a team: make sure your team can handle the most popular Pokemon and common strategies in the format. Keep checking the global link for the usage stats on BattleSpot and Pokemon Showdown's usage stats. It is highly recommended that your team has a balance of bulk, power, and speed on your team. Protect is a staple move in VGC that most Pokemon should have in order to scout, stall out Weather or Trick Room, to make safe plays, to get momentum, etc. Pokemon holding a choice item, holding an Assault Vest, or having a better move pool that it might not be worth having Protect are major exceptions. Things you may want on a team: redirection supports heavy hitters or Pokemon that wants to use a setup move. Status is always a big thing in VGC, like Burn from Will-O-Wisp, Poison from Toxic, and Paralysis from Thunder Wave. It's not necessary to have status on the team, but it helps to cripple an opponent. Support moves are useful to gain an upper hand, such as Light Screen, Reflect, Aurora Veil, Snarl, Helping Hand, Taunt, Haze, Roar, etc. Fake Out is a move that a lot of VGC teams have in order to set up strategies such as Trick Room, Tailwind, Icy Wind, or want to set up Pokemon like Swords Dance, Belly Drum, etc. Priority moves help in some situations where it allows Pokemon to move first. There are abilities that make some moves have priority, for instance Prankster, which allows SAS category moves to have a +1 priority, usually on Thunderous Incarnate and Whimsicott. Gale Wings is an ability that gives flying type moves a +1 priority if the Pokemon is at full health, for instance Talonflame. And there's Comfey that gives a +3 priority to all healing type moves, which is the ability Triage. Speed control isn't necessary but very good on most teams: Trick Room, Tailwind, Icy Wind, Bulldoze, etc. Questions to ask yourself during the team building process. Am I weak to a certain team composition? Is there anything I can do or change to improve this matchup? Am I bringing every Pokemon on my team to games? Is this Pokemon doing the job I need it to do? If I change this on my team, does it change any of the dynamics on my team? Am I comfortable using this team/core? Is there anything I can change to make this team fit my playstyle or me as a player more? Do I understand all the options and possibilities I have with this team? Some advice for team building. A team might do well even if it looks weird on paper, and a team might do bad even if it looks good on paper. You'll never really know how a team will really do until you play around with it and experiment around. Do not hesitate to replace a Pokemon if it isn't being brought, and I believe I cannot stress this point enough. A lot of players are like, oh, this Pokemon's so good though, but if it's not doing work on your team, what's the point of having that Pokemon in the team? You're better letting go and something else could take its slot. If you aren't comfortable playing with the team, try changing some sets, EVs, items, or even Pokemon. If you're still not comfortable using the team, write the original team idea down somewhere and save it for a later date. It might be something that cannot be completed until later in the season as the metagame progresses. Make a team that suits your playstyle as a player. Highly recommend doing this, because why would you make a defensive team if you are a heavily aggressive player who makes a lot of offensive reads and tries to do as much damage as possible? What's the point of playing Perish Trap if you're very impatient as a player? Like, what's the point of doing that? If you want to make a really solid team, know your playstyle first, figure out how you play, and then make a team that is comfortable to you. That's my #1 recommendation in general when playing and having a team that you want to use in tournament. If you have 5 Pokemon on the team and are struggling to find the last member, it doesn't hurt to experiment around by adding random Pokemon to a team. Of course, this doesn't mean like add a Magikarp or something, because that's not going to help you with the team building process. Add Pokemon that might, offer something, such as fake out support, like Intimidate, like a ground immunity if your team's weak to ground. Just add some kind of logical choice there. But do not just throw on anything. Don't expect the first draft of a team to become the final product. It can take a lot of time to make a team, and there's always going to be edits and changes, especially if you're using the team for a long period of time. So do not always expect the first draft to be a completed version. It takes multiple trials and errors, and you're always going to have to repeat the process several times. Testing the team. After having a completed team, be sure to test it on the Pokemon Showdown ladder, Battle Spot ladder, or having best of 3s with people. If you are having trouble with one Pokemon or strategy consistently, adjust your team in order to have a better way to prepare for it. Note, teams can continue to adjust as the metagame advances, so make sure your team can handle the most recent changes. Teams can take as short as 5 minutes to adjust to your liking, or months, so do not feel discouraged about your team. If you are still dissatisfied with your team, scrapping is an idea, or of course, writing it down for later, as I did mention earlier, or taking what you liked from the team and turning it into a new core are options. If you tested the team and liked it, build it in-game and test it, since in-game and Showdown have different feels. Same thing for best of 1 versus best of 3. Maybe you have, a good tech that's great in the best of 1, but your opponent can catch on in a best of 3, and best of 3s are usually tend to be what most VGC events are about, especially the big ones such as regionals, internationals, and worlds are all in the best of 3 format. If the team is to your liking, you are satisfied with the result and have a deep understanding of the team, you have made a successful VGC 2018 team. So I hope this guide has helped you into understanding the process that goes through while building a VGC 2018 team. I hope you liked this. Please leave a like down below to show your support if you did enjoy this and thought this was helpful, as well as feel free to leave a comment down below letting me know if this helped you, or if you have any feedback of how I can improve the series potentially in the future. I might make a future team building guide for VGC 2018 as well if the metagame really changes drastically and I have to update the team building guide. I will do so, but hope everyone enjoyed this. And if you are still new to VGC, you can go check out my resources guide, and which is also a introductions to VGC video as well. So I highly recommend go checking it out. Description in down below. But otherwise, thank you for watching, and I will catch you around in another video.